Are you looking for a faster video? Well, today it's a live stream, and I know you're probably looking for a really nice and tidy, edited down video, but I have ways for you to make it faster. You can click that little gear on the YouTube settings right there on the video and adjust the playback speed, make me sound like a chipmunk, and it'll go a lot faster. You can also look and see if there's timestamps for this project in the description, and if you're on a desktop, you can hover over the time bar at the bottom of the screen and see if it's chunked up into chapters, and then that way you can go directly to the step you're looking for. And lastly, you can also tap on the screen on the right hand side of the video picture or on the left hand side to make the video jump ahead, forward or backward if you're on a mobile device. And you can adjust that amount in your settings so you can have complete control over how much it jumps. So if you are on a desktop, you can use the fast forward or the rewind, and that will make it go faster as well. You can also enable subtitles, and the little CC on the screen will enable closed captioning. That way, if I am a little bit harder to understand with that double playback speed, the subtitles might help you out. All right, well, I know that it's not a nice little edited video, but if you sew with me, we'll get there together and it'll be lots of fun. And now for the live stream. Happy sewing! Hello. Whoa, that's so bright. Let me tone that down a little bit. Oh my goodness. It wasn't that bright a second ago, but I think it got a little bit brighter here, so I'm sorry. Let's see, I think it goes this way. That's so much better. How's it going? How's it going? Hi, Elena. Hi, Nicole. Hello, Susie from Las Vegas. How's it going? Hi, Aisha. Hi, Emily. Hi, Delwyn. Hello, Walter. How are you guys and gals? I'm changing my needle. I just remembered at the last second that I changed to like a 14 the other day, right? I don't even remember what we were making. Why did I change to a size 14? Oh, for the lining of the auburn. That's right. Right? Hi, Terry. How's it going? So I'm going to be sewing the Cocoon project bag today. That's my pattern. I don't have a whole lot of patterns, but I am releasing some. I wish they were clothing patterns, but they're not. I don't have time for that. Sorry, I wish I did. I really wish I did. All right, so I'm going to be doing variations on the pattern today. So we cut out 3 yesterday, and then I cut out a 4th one because I saw Malin saying, well, it would be nice to see you sew it fast. We'll see if I have time at the end. No pun intended. Sleeve lining. Thank you, Nicole. I knew that. I was like, I don't think I had switched to a 14 just for that linen. Yeah. You can't get your Wardrobe by Me file to Adobe. What? How come, Terry? Because I don't have any problem with that, and I use Adobe as well. Hi, Lynn. Hi, hi, hi. All right, so what else do I want to say? Well, if you're new here, I'm Sarami, and I have a long career in the garment and sewing industry, and I was a trained pattern drafter and designer, still am. And you can learn about my whole long thing probably in the intro. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of boring, but no, you're old. All right, well, let's walk you through that soon, Terry. You're stuck, Walter. Might get torquing. Oh, no. Hi, Shafali. How do you say that? Shafali? That's a really pretty name. Or handsome name. I guess I shouldn't assume. I know I shouldn't assume. Let's see what else. If you want to talk in the chat, we love for you to talk in the chat. Everyone's super awesome in here, and it's all different sewing abilities. People are here from all around the world. So everyone's welcome. if you're watching this on the playback, the chat might not be showing for you. It takes like 12 hours to process. I don't have any control over that. Okay, good. I'm glad. As someone with a unique name, I understand the struggle. I've also let go of it too. So, just because sometimes it bugs me though, like when I will say it sometimes bugs me. Like certain pronunciations will bug me. Hello, Sydney. Let's see, what else do we want to say? So this pattern comes with a full how-to video that's edited. There's like chapters or timestamps in it. So it's you know, pretty concise. It's like, I think it's only like a 35 or 40-minute video, and it includes cutting out. One thing I didn't mention in the cutting out yesterday was directional prints, because that's kind of important when you're planning the cocoon, because you might end up with the design upside down on one side if you're not careful. Oh, awesome, Cheryl. Good, I'm glad. Yeah, it shows when I'm live, and then right when I'm done, it uploads automatically to YouTube, which is really nice, but they take time to process the chat. It really bugs some folks, and I wish I could fix that. I think the only thing I could do, and it would just be so much extra work for me, is download my stream right when it happens and then re-upload it. But you know what? That actually wouldn't work. I can't download the chat. This is the only way to do it for a live stream. But at least it does show upon replay a few hours later. Oh, interesting, Elena. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if you edited a file. Okay, yeah, so that would be slightly different than what we were talking about yesterday by printing a PDF from the layers that we were wanting. Okay, so if you weren't here yesterday, we were talking about how to get around the fact that some printers, when you go to order a large format version of your pattern, they won't uncheck boxes in the layers if that's available. And it's so annoying because it's like sometimes I buy a pattern because it has layers and I can uncheck, 12 different sizes and just leave like 2 sizes, right? So if they won't uncheck the layers, you have all those sizes on there. And I don't know why they won't, Oh, really, Sydney? Oh, that's interesting. No, I don't think it does. That's so weird. It was missing a lot of the chat. And it wasn't that top chat, live chat thing. I wonder if YouTube only uploads top chat. I'm going to look at live chat. So that is one thing. If you're new here, if you look at the very top of the chat window, like right on my desktop, it's right under my finger. It says, there's a little thing that says live chat or top chat. You want to toggle on live chat because sometimes some comments for no rhyme or reason don't show up, and people will be responding to them. I'm like, what are they talking about? So, oh no, Cheryl, it wasn't you at all. Definitely a processing thing. So, okay, so, oh, Elena, okay. Oh, this is so intriguing. All right, and then Mafio in the Facebook group, she posted a link to a printer that's kind of intriguing because she says they do uncheck layers for you. But I also noticed that they design patterns where you cut out the size that fits you by connecting dots. It's kind of interesting. But that's so interesting, Elena. That'll be cool. That'll be cool to know. Good. I love a good experiment. You know me. Right, Sydney? That's so weird. I might have to go look at that. Although I don't like watching really old streams of me. I'm like, wow, that's what you said? Like, you could have done that better all the time. Hello, Nancy. How's it going? All right, so I have this little case. So I wanted to get your guys' feedback on the next pattern I make. I have a few. So a lot of you don't know the patterns I had as chicken boots. So there's a couple that have been requested. One is the double double, which is a drawstring bag that has the clear bottom. So it's a lot like that zip double I made, but it has a fabric upper that has a webbing draw cord handle combination. It's kind of a cool technique that I developed. But was a really, really, really popular bag for me, and I don't know why I didn't make it into a pattern yet. It wasn't one I used, honestly. I like the clear wristlet. So the clear wristlet's another one. Super specific use. You're pretty much a knitter or a crocheter if you're using that bag. I have heard of people who spin that put their fiber in there. So that's a pretty niche use, but you know, my whole business is based on a niche. So here's the other thing. This was a pattern I designed towards the end of Chicken Boots, and we only manufactured for one season. It's called the Quickie, and it's a tool case, but it's just a small abbreviated version. So we specialized in tool cases, and they were zippered, but they would hold all of your double pointed needles or all of your crochet hooks. Nancy, thank you. I love the little corgi. Thank you, Nancy. I thought you were already, what? Wait, you guys are already patrons. Why are these popping up? Is this going to be a thing? Yeah, these are old. All right, we have to turn the alert box off. I don't know why YouTube's doing that. Yeah, we're going to turn the alert box off. Sorry. Are you guys, you're not getting those in the chat. We're only getting those on the screen. That's really weird. Wait. Oh, I thought the stream was dead or something. Okay. All right. So yeah. So this has some gathered vertical pockets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can adjust however many you want. And they're gathered. They're very snug. It has a zippered pocket here that is, you know, obviously movable and clear. Doesn't have to be clear. You can make this without vinyl. And then it has 4 pockets here, 1, 2, 3, and 1 clear one. And I have a video where I load this thing up, and it just has an elastic closure. The whole point of this was that it didn't have a zipper closure. And then I have one loaded up where I go like this and nothing comes out. So I promise it's secure, even though it doesn't seem like it. No zipper to install so that it's like an opening case with a zipper closure. There's a little zipper here, but this is easy, flat. A little bit of binding, because you know how I like good binding. I didn't do a very good job on this binding, though, because I was kind of distracted at the time. But anyway, I wanted to get everyone's feedback on which pattern I do next after the Cocoon. So anyway, all right, let's start sewing. So I'm going to be changing thread colors a lot today. I'm just going to throw that over there. So the 3 variations I'm going to be doing, and let me show you what one looks like, because I guess that would help, huh? And you know what's really funny is that all of these have sold on my website, all those sewn products, except for these. These were the ones I actually made here, but they had a printing error in the fabric. And I'm thinking people aren't buying them because of that printing error, but it's on the cover here. It's on the front here. Can you see the printing error? Like, it's really barely perceptible. I have a box on my screen I'm trying to get rid of. You see it? It's right here. You see that? That's it. That's it. So if anyone's been hesitating because they're not sure what the printing error is, it is actually on there. You really just can't see it. I can't see it with my glasses off either. Let's see. I'm trying to show it better. You can see it really good right there. It was just a repeat error, and it's right there a tiny bit. So it's a line. It's more visible in person than on the camera. But anyway, I just wanted you to see. So this is the little Cocoon bag. Obviously folds flat. It was designed for a knitting and crocheting crowd, or people who use yarn, because it was for a yarn club. And it holds quite a bit. It looks small, but it holds like 2 skeins plus your project. That's what it looks like. All right. I'm not trying to get you to buy my pattern, but I'm just trying to give you some reference of what we're sewing today. Even if you're not interested in this pattern at all, if you're a bag maker, you like to make bags, you might get some little tips and tricks today, and feel free to ask me any questions about bag making, because that was something I did a lot of. I know, right, Sarah? I know, it's really weird because it made me think maybe I shouldn't have picked this color to make these bags in for Sincere Sheep, because maybe people didn't actually like that color, but I actually let her pick the color. I showed her all my colors. This is what I wanted. I wanted it to be in this color, and she picked the dark teal or the light teal. It was those two. And I was like, well, fall, like late, like summer going into fall, I felt like a darker color would probably be like something more autumnal, you know? It was called the Quickie, Leslie. All right, so this variation on the Cocoon is going to have a clear front inset. And I'm also going to sew this. I kind of changed my mind. We didn't sort out a few of the details yesterday when we were cutting things out. So one of the things I want to show is how to sew one of these without the facing along the top edge. If you're one of those people that's like, I don't want to do that facing, you can skip it for sure. So I'm going to do it on this bag here because it makes the most sense of the three we cut out yesterday to do it on this one. Plus, what was the other thing I was thinking of? I don't remember. But that means I'm going to take this little piece of the facing that I think it was Leslie that you recommended we do it in this color. I'm going to bind the top edge here, but you know what? This isn't wide enough. This isn't wide enough to bind with. So I could bind it to the front edge like this. That would work. It's wide enough to go to one side. It's not wide enough to straddle the edge. I mean, I'm good at binding, but I don't really want to do that. This is a 12 gauge matte vinyl. You can get it at places like Joann Fabrics if you're in the United States. Yeah, I always pick up matte or non-glare. Sometimes they call it frosted. Those are the three keywords I have found. I've researched vinyl a lot. What is the housewife thing you're saying? It's like a housewife in sewing? What is that? I've never heard that. Yeah, so I was thinking about making that a pattern, Allison. I was just kind of getting everyone's feeling, because it's not really a bag, it's more like an organizer. I'm so uncomfortable right now, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, if you don't have vinyl handy, there's a few options. You know those bags that you get linens in that are zippered? You can try one of those. I don't feel like that's going to last very long. This stuff doesn't crack. There's definitely some that do. I feel like my last supplier lasted years, but not indefinitely, whereas this one does, but they're also kind of, they weren't the nicest company to deal with, especially because I was a woman-owned business. They were very rude to me for no reason at all, so I stopped buying from them. It's a sewing kit. Oh, really? Oh, I think I've heard of Sewistine. I'll have to check it out. It's a little historical sewing. You can have needles and thread and buttons and things in it. Okay. So maybe I'll look those up and see if I can customize the pockets inside to be more like that. Maybe I'll actually give some options for pockets so people could use it for holding any kinds of tools. I get a lot of folks that like those things for makeup organization or painting, or like painting or drawing on the go, you know, because we would sell the DPN case often to folks like that. Whereas like the interchangeable needle case, that was kind of specific. It had so many little vertical pockets and then the pockets for the cords, you know, so I don't know if I'll ever make those patterns, but I would like to show people how to sew a zippered needle case, or a zippered case, you know, like a case that opens like this, because it's not that bad. It is in the beginning, though. I will be honest. It isn't, you know, it took me a while. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to finish this clear front. So you don't actually have to finish the top edge of this vinyl, but we're going to because we want it to look a little nicer than just the raw edge right there, right? Is my machine on? Yeah. So this isn't a bias cut, but you could use bias cut. And because it's only 1 inch wide, I'm going to bind it to the right side. So we're going to start on the wrong side, right? If you're new here, I like to sew a lot of binding. I haven't been lately. You're going to probably start seeing me sew a little bit more binding now. If you're using bias, tug on it gently. It'll help. And if you're sewing on vinyl, I have lots of tips for that, no matter what pattern you're doing. I really recommend always trying to keep your presser foot in contact with the fabric, between the fabric and the vinyl. If your presser foot has to come in contact with the vinyl, it might drag, and that's when you hear people talking about using Teflon feet or non-stick feet, things like that. And you can also just use a piece of Scotch tape. So just put a piece of tape on the underside of your presser foot. I'll show you. This is what a Teflon foot usually looks like. You do have to replace them periodically. Mine's actually in pretty good shape because they're so soft that the feed dogs will actually wear down the bottom. Why is my video so unsharp? Sewistine. Okay, I'll check it out. Yeah, I know, Cheryl. I know. We made a really good one because I was really bent on making cases that your tools, you can't lose your tools. And I did it not at a loss, but I broke even on those because I felt so strongly about having good cases out there. There's so many bad cases and people spend so much on their tools. But I'm really happy with the case we made because people will have that forever, you know. All right, so this is not a proper foot. This is a zipper foot or a narrow foot. But you would just put a piece of Scotch tape here. And then I take like a nail file and I get rid of all the excess. Because you don't want it grabbing thread and stuff. And then that'll act like a temporary Teflon coating. Teflon, I know, is like a brand name, but you know what I mean. And it will eventually kind of wear off and the tape will just kind of disappear and then you can just reapply it, or a piece of tissue paper will work as well. All right, so I'm going to still clip this edge because we're going to turn it to the right side. I pulled on this little strip of fabric to pretend like it was bias, and oh, I really feel it. You can kind of see the tension in it. See how it's sticking up, straight up? That's a good thing. That'll make it easier to turn to the right side and lay flat. I feel like I could have clipped that a little more aggressively, but it's such a narrow seam. Look at that weird little bump I have right there. I'm going to go a little bit more. Because it's going to bend down the seam allowance towards the inset, it needs to spread out. This little edge here. If we were just binding the edge and the binding was sitting like this, I guess I could have used this as binding, like sticking straight up, then you wouldn't have to clip the edge because nothing's bending back. But because it's bending towards the front, I need to clip that. So we're going to edge stitch this. This is kind of funny to bind this piece of vinyl like this, but it'll give it a nice little decorative edge, and it will make it a little stronger. Kind of. That's kind of debatable, actually. Yeah, I bet you guys do. Oh, this is really showing that this isn't bias cut. Let's hope that this works good. So can I do it? I should have just cut a piece of bias. Bias is the way, I'm telling you. I think it'll work fine. All right, now we have just like a little decorative edge to our inset. We're going to cut this flush with the sides here. And now that's ready to go. All right, so now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to set these aside. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew the ends together. So where these pins are is where the webbing handle will go. So fold your cocoon right sides together along the fold line that you cut the fabric on. And we're going to sew these short ends with a 1/4 inch seam. And then we're going to open this seam up, and I actually think if your bobbin thread looks good, I would do it from the inside since the seam allowance is so narrow. So I'm going to turn it right side out, but I'm going to sew it on the inside here, and I'm just going to open up this seam and sew on either side of it. We're leaving that edge raw. Now you could overlock it if you really, really need to, but you don't. And it gives it kind of a cool look not having the overlock in there. This is the one we are going to overlock the top edge of. But I really like the way it looks with the raw edge. And you see how I start from the top and then I go down and then turn across and then go back up. It's a little easier than having to go back up and start at the top again. Just keeping it all one continuous stitch. The pins are poking me, and I don't like that at all. I should have used a marker or something. See, I'm going to turn like this. As long as you turn within the seam allowance down there, which the seam allowance at the bottom there is a 1/2 inch. I don't lengthen the stitch. I never did, Cheryl. We sewed a lot of vinyl when I had my business. A lot of vinyl. The problems with vinyl, there are many. A lot of people, though, buy really bad quality vinyl, which is a shame, and there's no excuse for that because vinyl is really, really affordable. So I always found the best quality I could because you don't want it to crack and then the whole thing would be trash. You can't fix vinyl, right? And your stitch length question is a really good one because you are perforating the vinyl. I wouldn't do a really short stitch length. It doesn't need it. But I just use kind of a standard one, I think. You know, something like, I don't even think you can see that. But all right, so now we have our ends there. Now, this would be a good time or after the next step to overlock that top edge. We're going to do our French seams next, and then we'll overlock it. So let's turn it inside. No. Sorry. Leave it right side out. I have to remember how to sew this. And you're going to put this wrong sides together at the bottoms. This is partly why you can have a heavier weight fabric and no stiffener to make the bag stay open, because the French seam gives it a little bit more stability and kind of keeps the shape without binding it. Because, you know me, I did a lot of bags with the seams bound, even on the vinyl stuff, because it gave it more body and it kind of formed the shape of the bag. But you don't always have to bind it. We could just do a French seam. You don't ever see French seams in bag making. There's no reason not to. Not every bag needs to be lined. And I see a lot of bag makers selling bags that are not that great of quality, which is a kind of a shame. But they have another hook. You know, like they're doing a really good job with fabric selection or knowing who their customer is, and they're like the finishing for a bag is really, really important because bags kind of get a lot of abuse. All right, so now I'm going to fold it right sides together, and you want it right along that seam edge. I just roll up between my fingers. Since I sew these production style, I only had to go to the iron for the lining of the inset, which I will do for one of my cocoons today. We never really ironed in production. It was really, 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 really rare. That's just not something. Did I do both these? No. That's just like, you don't really see an iron on a production floor. It gives it legs, yeah. That's a great way to put it, Lynn. And I know that all the binding I do in a lot of my products kind of scares people. So this was a way also to prevent that. Now, you will sometimes see like this, the thickness right here, my machine wants to push off that edge. So I really have to tell it, no, 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 we're gonna stay really close. If you get a different seam allowance here, it's not gonna affect the bag anywhere, except it'll make your bag a tiny bit shorter and your corner, you know, this width here a little bit wider, right? So if you have a higher seam allowance up here, it's up here now, right? So now the seam is obviously longer and your bag got shorter. So if you really can't get close to that, you need to do a little bit bigger seam allowance. Yeah, and then you can do the other one the same way. Is it, Nicole? Should I stop talking? What is the seam on the second pass? That was a French seam. Oh, the seam allowance, it's about a 1/4 inch. The total seam allowance allowed for on this is a 1/2 inch. And all that's in the how-to video. So if I go too fast or I skip something, really I'm just focusing on the variation. And I just want folks that are kind of on the fence about sewing this to know that they can totally do it on their home machine. All right, so we're gonna overlock this top edge, which you don't do on the original Cocoon because it has a facing around the top edge. But if you don't wanna do that facing, and understand that a lot of people don't, we can overlock it. And you don't actually have to, but I think you're gonna want to. All right, let's go to the serger. All right, I'm gonna turn this right side in. Gotta move my serger over. Is that a good spot? All right, and I'm gonna start and stop at the bottom here. This is the end with the handle because that's where the pins are. All right, fine. I won't push that under. In the how-to video, I kind of start and stop where the notches are. In fact, we do need to transfer those notches. Let's see. I'm going to use a pin. So we have 2 notches. Mine are barely there. Here's one right here. And we're going to put a little... You can put chalk or something. This is where the top of the inset is. This one is the corner of the inset, and there should be one over here. You don't have much seam allowance there. You just want to be able to see it with your serger. All right, so let's just go around the perimeter edge here. Don't trim any off. You really don't have a lot of seam allowance. My serger is a little wide for this seam. Get all these little edges, all these threads towards the raw edge. Where are my scissors? They're too far away. So if you want, and you're doing a fabric inset, you can do the 3 sides, not on the vinyl, I'll show you. Wait. But say you were doing a fabric inset and you're doing this serged edge here, you might as well just serge these 3 sides, but you would serge this normally. And just do these 3. You don't have to because this is an angle. These will not unravel. but it will be in line with the way the bag looks if you want to. All right. I like the way that looks on the screen. It's like a little bucket. All right, so now we're going to, we'll attach our handle now. All right, so for me, it's where the pins went in. So I'm going to line up my handle. I'm just going to center it where those pins are. And we're going to sew across the end a 1/4 inch seam. Trim. Mine always leaves. You saw that tail of thread. Where'd that go? What the heck? All right, so then you're going to pull it pretty firmly. And I kind of smash it. I kind of make this nice and smooth. And I'm going to enclose that raw edge now. Now you're really close to this edge up here, but don't worry, you're not too close. And your handle, when you start this, is pointing up at this top edge. Hey, Libby, how's it going? All right, so same thing here. So remember, this is the right side, so flip it over. Put those raw edges towards, oops, there's my pins. And it might be confusing, like, which way do I go? Just make sure you want this raw edge pointing towards the top edge of the cocoon, the edge I just serged. It does look like it can go a few different ways, but it can't. So it's not as confusing as it feels in the moment. I kept thinking the same thing when I was sewing these. I was like, wait, do I have this going the right direction? And then I realized I really couldn't do it the wrong way. It would be really weird to point it going down. All right, so like I said, you're going to pull this up pretty firmly, smash it down. When you're doing a lot of bags, your hands get super strong because you're kind of, you know, beating things into submission all the time. All right, so now we're going to attach the inset. And the reason I wanted to bind this edge rather than putting it on the end, so if I would have put it on the end, I would have had to trim off a 1/4 inch seam allowance there when I bound it. Because if you didn't do that, it's okay. You're just going to find that it needs to, where's that first notch? This notch that's closest to the handle here, you're going to probably have to put that like a 1/4 inch above it because you didn't take off the seam allowance there. This points right at that notch. You can probably barely see that little orange mark. A cutting out trance. Ooh, what are you making? And then if you want, take a look at where it's going to line up with your other notch down here. So mine's right there. See that little, can you see that little orange dot right there? You want this inset to go about a 1/4 inch past it. So here's my vinyl. My thumbnail here is at that notch because you're going to pivot right there before you get to the end. So that checks out. This point goes to that notch there. And this seems a little awkward when you're sewing this. And I also have this right sides together. It probably doesn't look like it to you, but this is the vinyl side and this is the fabric side. This is going to feel a little awkward. So anytime you're doing like bag making or tight spaces, I just say focus on the little 4 inches that right here on the bed of your machine and just try and keep those in check because it can be a little bit frustrating when you're feeling a little bit like the bag's kind of getting away from you. But if you just focus on that little area, it'll calm you. Because that kind of stuff used to really, really bug me. And in fact, I don't think I would have made it as a bag maker if I didn't figure out a way to get past that. You need a cutting out trance. All right, so now I'm going to pivot there. Now, if you're doing the vinyl, you can't hoik on your vinyl too much. Just pivot there. But you can see if you're getting any tucks under there. Here, let's do this. So see here, here's my vinyl. Do you want me to brighten it up at all? So here. I just did this seam here, right? I'm stopping 1/4 inch away. Don't pull, I pull hard on the fabric versions of this, but don't pull hard on the vinyl version. You can tear vinyl, especially if your kid didn't find something as heavyweight as this. Hi Kathy, how's it going? Or the 2 inches, yeah, exactly. Focus on the 4 inches or the 2 inches, whatever you get. Sometimes it's 1 inch, right? Can't tell if it's the padding top or the bag that's extra crunchy. This is the Paddington top, which is a little crunchy. It is a little crunchy. The bag is too, though. Is that what the ASMR part you're liking? All right, so here we are. We're approaching, this is the bottom of our cocoon. Here's that seam that we just sewed, right? And we're seeing it through the vinyl, see? Now here's my other corner. And so this should pretty much go just past that notch of the corner right here. Here's the notch. Here's my vinyl. And it's going to go about 1/4 inch past. And same thing, you're going to sink your needle down. Always sink your needle down, especially in heavy duty bag making. I'm going to pivot the project. And now I'm going to pull the inset around, but not too hard. I can see that I don't have any tucks under there. That's the one advantage of the vinyl, right? You can kind of see. You get like a window. If only all of our projects were see-through, right? All right, and so then this point should line up to your first notch. And it does. Phew. Okay. So let's trim this thread. Everything looks good. I'm going to trim off a little bit of this vinyl here because that stuff can get really pokey. Ooh, I don't want to nick my serging though. You don't have to. If you had trouble turning your corner there, what I recommend is clipping into this right here up to that seam line. Those scissors aren't going to do it because this denim's a little heavier. It'll help the pivot. This is while you're sewing. I'll do it now anyway, just so that when we turn it right side out. So don't grab your vinyl, grab your bag. The vinyl really is really strong, but you can't do things like grab it when it's perforated, you know? Oh, Nancy, nice. You can do that for sure. I would think your size, you would be able to do a 1.5 yards. I mean, it depends on the fabric width, I guess. So one of the trickiest parts about what we did was when you turned vinyl right side out, you'd get these little cracks. I wasn't very nice just now to this when I did that. You can be nicer when you turn it. I will say that you can gently iron vinyl if you put a press cloth over it on a low heat. Rayanne was genius at this. She was so good at managing vinyl, and she did most of the vinyl sewing. It was awesome. And she had a Teflon foot on her machine 100% of the time. I did all the other stuff. I did all the needle cases, pattern holders, project bags, and pocket buckets. I did the heavy duty stuff. She did the kind of subtle stuff. I'm kind of a bowl in a china shop when it comes to sewing, if you haven't noticed. All right, so I'm going to raise this up a little bit. Isn't this little hit of the teal cute? I'm glad I think it was Leslie that suggested that. I'm glad she did. All right, so this just needs one more step, and that's just to hem this top edge. I really like the clear version. I've never made one clear. I just want to see it. I know I'm not supposed to look till I'm all done, but yeah, I think that's pretty nifty. Clear version. I know someone in particular is going to do this. I know it when she sees this. All right, so we're not doing the facing, so we just need to hem down this edge right here. And if you were doing fabric, I'd actually go around the inset and the perimeter. It kind of makes kind of a cool, clean, continuous line. But if you don't want to, you can just start and stop. I think I'm going to start and stop right at the base of my binding here, just to really sink this seam down rather than it getting floppy, you know, here. I think that'll be a nice touch. And now this is the step where we're going to also flatten down the handle, I just thought of, I need a label. Meaning we're going to include the handle in this last seam. So we're going to flatten all this out and just focus on this, the starting of this first. And now, let's bring this back over. And we're just going to turn it over that 1/4 inch seam. And you see how this handle's nice and flat under here? You don't want it to do anything weird. I like putting my label under here. It's really great because if you forget to do it, you can pop out some stitches under the handle and no one can see that you've started and stopped there a couple times inside the handle. Strategies. I do use giant needles, don't I? You're a 1/4 yard short, but you're making it work. You're in the train. I love it. I was just ordering some fabric for... I'm going to make another fleece pullover. I can tell my husband's not going to wear the one I made him, and it turned out so amazing, and it's because the neck position is just not right for him. All right, so same thing. You come around, you flatten out your handle. This video was more about sewing variations and less about how-to, but I'm definitely doing some how-to here. I don't mind at all. If it's too much, just let me know. Okay. And my little back stitch thread kind of sucked into there. I hate that. You can see why I don't like back stitches. All right, this is done. Gosh, I kind of don't want to sell this one, but I don't need it. And I can always make one, right? That's pretty cute. That is pretty darn cute. I really like the clear. Yeah. All right, so let's... If you make bags for a living, the other thing you have to think about is how you can fold it flat, because you have to ship it. And I couldn't with some of our bags. It's kind of a bummer. People had to pay so much in shipping because I knew they wouldn't be okay with me flattening their bag. All right. I get a little obsessive over it because I'm like, will it work? Flatten? Why isn't it? It's not behaving. It's like I gotta teach it. This is how you fold flat. All right, I know, it's really cute. One down. Let's put that one there. All right, so this next one, this one's gonna be probably entertaining because I had done so much on, oh, my bobbin didn't wind. I don't sew much on wax cotton. Gosh, darn it. I'm gonna sew the other one next because I need a bobbin. What happened here? What the heck? Look at this. What the heck? So I could not find green thread anywhere. This is the one green, this is the one color of thread I never, ever have. And you guys, it was a real struggle because my daughter was in 4-H. Yeah, Cheryl, do you have Joanne Fabrics? Sorry, I need to thread the top of my cradle. For new here, you know how much I hate to thread on camera. I gotta thread my bobbin winder, and then I'm gonna sew the other bag first so that this bobbin's wound by the time I'm done. This was why I was a little bit late getting started, because I was setting this bobbin winder up, and then I forgot to push it in. Yeah, so every time my daughter had like a patch for her hat, I had this one little spool of green, like 4-H green, and I just hoarded it. Oh, the baby doll. Yeah, I had so many silly names for, is this, oh, there's 2 of them here. I had so many silly names for this bag. Cocoon was definitely not my favorite. But like it reminded me of a cradle board or a papoose. I got this from Al Francis Textiles on Etsy. It's pretty stiff, I'm going to tell you. But I see Noodlehead use it all the time, so she gives me confidence. I've used it, I used it on one of the cocoons that I sold, and it was fantastic. And when they came out with that green color, I was like, oh, I have to have that. Oh, you know what? I want black first, don't I? Well, we'll just sew for a bit, and then I'll put my handle on. So, I have so many thread colors today. Yeah, Cheryl, I hear ya. I haven't been in one in years. I totally feel you on that. But I will say, that is where I started off first, buying vinyl. And that right there it could be some of the Joann's vinyl. I don't think so because it's been years since I bought from there. I think that's from the first vendor. Yeah. Oh, it was because that was the tissue paper one. Yeah, that's from a different vendor. But they do have the matte or frosted or non-glare and 12 gauge. So the language I'm using about that vinyl is taken directly from their product, and I use it because it's the most readily available. You know where you can try Sailrite? Have you ever shopped from Sailrite? S-A-I-L, like a sail on a boat, and then R-I-T-E. They probably only have really heavy stuff, and I doubt they have frosted. But you wouldn't be buying it then from Joann, if that helps. All right, I hope I have a lot of thread colors going on here. Okay, so where's the inset? Here we go. So one of the things I cut off camera yesterday was a lining for this inset. My camera's all higgledy-piggledy. All right, I have to do a few things to the camera here. Oh, it has changed. All right, I'm going to brighten this up a little bit and soften the sharpness because the Essex linen, it was like looking a little pixelated. All right, so this one, just because I interfaced this, so this, if you weren't here yesterday, what I did was I took 2 pieces of Essex linen and then I fused them together with something called Wonder Under. You could use a fusible Pellon and then just line the bag. So this was just to do an experiment if you didn't have a heavyweight fabric on hand like the denim I keep using or the wax canvas, right? And we have far more access probably to things like quilting cottons and lighter weight fabrics that still have a lot of body, and they have these, and the most, you know, most adorable prints, right? But sometimes they don't have a canvas that you like, or maybe you don't have a canvas ready. Maybe your canvas is kind of soft and floppy, like some of the ones I've used. This was a way to try and make the fabric have more body and stiffness so that it could be more appropriate for the cocoon. So this and this are fused, so you can see the blues are a little different from one another, barely. My cameras hate this linen, huh? So this is an unfused piece. I'm just gonna line this, and we're gonna sew this just like you do on the others. So I think I'm doing the turquoise as the right side. So we're gonna put this right sides together, and I'm gonna sew this at a 1/4 inch seam. So this is like the way you normally sew the cocoon. And then we're gonna clip this edge. And this one is going to have the facing, so we're just going to understitch this. You can also turn it to the inside and edge stitch it if you like. Or if you're doing the version without the facing like I just did on that first bag, what I would do is I would leave this unstitched and then stitch it in the hem so you have a nice continuous thing. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna iron this. I'm gonna sew across the bottom here. Let's go over to the iron. We don't need the serger now. Boy. All right, so I'm gonna press this to the inside, and this I understitched it. Even though I clipped it, it still wants to kind of misbehave, you know? Ironing it is gonna help, not something you would ever do in production, but I did on these because I tried all kinds of ways to get away from ironing these, but ironing just looked the best. And, you know, yes, I had to make a lot of them, but it wasn't like a long step, and it was still within the realm of how I priced it, so it was okay. I'm just gonna let it get a little hotter. But it's already behaving, and I like the way it looks nice and clean with no stitching showing. That was just a preference of mine. In certain fabrics and applications, I would really like to see the top stitching. So now you can overlock across the bottom here. I don't have matching thread, but I'm going to use my serger anyway. Now your lining might stick out a little bit because we pressed it to the inside a little bit more. That's okay. Now if you want, you can do the sides, but like I say, they won't unravel past this little edge here, and I kind of wanted to leave it raw. That was just part of what I was kind of experimenting with this bag. I didn't want any serging really showing in the finished product of this bag, so. Right? Yeah, it's so funny because I have to go to a UPS store and in town, which is like 20 minutes away. And it's next to the Joann's, and I keep telling myself, you should just go in there, Sarah. You haven't been in one of those in years, and maybe you'll find something useful. And then part of me is like, oh, I don't think I can handle it. I don't think I can handle it because I don't, like, it's useful. I'm really thankful that there's one, you know, but I don't really need anything, so I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, right, Carrie? Exactly. I feel like I'm always, yeah, so. Okay, so we're going to sew this one kind of the straight up way of the whole cocoon. The nifty thing on this one was the fact that we interfaced regular old fabric. So it's an experiment to see, will that give us enough body to be able to use something like a quilting cotton? And I think so. I think if you're willing to interface it and then line it so you can hide the interfacing, you could totally use your stash. You're also talking about using then 3 layers, which adds a lot to the cost of the project. So that's why I didn't do that. No, save yourself. Yeah, right, Terry? I know what you mean. I mean, I do a lot of online fabric shopping, but it's also because there's not a lot of garment-specific fabrics. All right, so same thing. I open the seam up and stitch it down. This linen is pretty thready. Imagine if I hadn't serged it. But it's still going to be secure. Yes, there's threads there. Once, you know, you pull off maybe a few of these, like if you want, you can sit here and pull them off, right? If you're cutting things well on the grain, this will end. It'll stop doing this because you can see the other color of thread sticking out there. This side wasn't cut as well on grain right there. That's why I have a few little bit of these guys poking out. So it's top stitched down nice and flat. It looks really, the thread really disappeared. I'm kind of surprised. You look for made in the USA fabric. That is a super rare thing. It's really hard to find, especially since we've exported so much of our production. I was just talking about this with someone in my office yesterday about how one of the tragedies of our manufacturing for the garment industry is the fact that we sold a lot of our denim weaving machines and jersey and like knits. We sold all those to other countries. And they're literally one of the only things we can claim as our contribution to the garment world as Americans is denim and t-shirts, sportswear in general. But that's the only real thing. And so people were pretty eager to get their hands on those denim making machines. And we didn't have any more production here, so we let them go. Textile mills were hurting, and textile factories. Yeah, that's what I did too, Nancy. I install it in the parking lot. You buy super specific Star Wars fleece. Oh, that's nice, Lynn. Oh, right. If you buy Big Four patterns, I think that is a good place to go. Yeah, Libby, you're right. Is Nick of Time a fabric company, Terry? That makes 501s in North Carolina. Yeah, exactly. That's very close to where the fabric was made. Carolinas. That's a big textile industry there. All right, so this is, we got our ends. We're going to do our Fringe seams now. I love the way this fabric looks in person. This like double-faced linen. I mean, linen looks good on both sides. But this feels really nice. All right, so wrong sides together. I'm doing like a scant 1/4 inch. You get a whole 1/2 inch for your seam allowance for this seam, but that's kind of barely enough to do a French seam. So you want to distribute your 1/2 inch judiciously. Yeah, I knew people that used to collect 501s, and there's a museum in Seattle. It's not a museum. It's like a collector. I don't like making things precious like that sometimes, but I do like historical stuff. I love going to, like I've been to Industrial Revolution museums, which are, like I went to one in Belgium, and I've been to somewhere in, I think, Birmingham, England. Yeah, exactly, Terry. Yeah, because we exported all of our manufacturing. And that's exactly it. I was just talking about this to someone yesterday. Because someone was saying, well, you know, I'm hoping that this is going to be the stuff that's going on in the world with the shipping. Maybe it's the push that will bring back domestic manufacturing here. But we don't have the infrastructure. We got rid of a lot of it. Oh, that might be it, Lynn. It might be the Pop Culture Museum. It has a funny name, doesn't it? I'm trying to remember the name of it. We used to talk about it, but this was like in the 80s. Or 90s, really. All right, so I'm enclosing that raw edge. I trimmed it close. So you can see my presser foot is trying to get pushed off the thickness of this seam here. You could, you know, increase the, I actually do have this kind of lighter than usual. Increase the pressure of your presser foot to kind of make it a little bit stronger in holding that in there. I forgot I lightened that up for something we sewed recently. Might have been when I was easing sleeves in or something. That really helped. Ooh, see, that was a little bit thick. Well, it's still straight enough though. All right, clip these threads. All right, so let's put our handle on, which is right here. And I still need to sew it. So what I did with the handle here was I interfaced one side, and this is the other part of this variation on this bag, is that we are making the handle. Yeah, Mopop, I think that's it. Did it used to be called something else though, like somebody's name? And then I think it was a guy, and then he maybe sold it. Yeah, that sounds so familiar. It's been a long time. They always wanted to, they would go, and I just don't think I ever went to Seattle with them or something. All right, so I interfaced one side. So if you're going to make your own handle, you can do this for anything. If you don't have webbing for a project, you can make your own handle. And actually, it's really nice. There's something about a fabric handle that is stronger, flatter, smoother. It feels nicer. You just need it to be 4 times the width of your finished webbing. I wanted this one to be about 1.5 inches wide, so I cut it 6 inches wide, and then the length I needed. I ironed it in half the long way, opened it up, and then ironed each half towards that center line, and then now I'm going to fold it all in half, and then we're going to stitch on each side. Maybe I could use this thread. Oh, I actually think I can use this thread. I hope I can use this thread. Let me sew across the end and see. Well, yeah, that works. I'm going to do that. Okay, so we're going to sew along each end here. This isn't hard making a handle. The one thing you want to make sure of is that all your folds are lining up. And then I would start at the same end that you started and sew again on this other side. Don't turn around and go back up, because you could get torquing, like diagonal lines in your handle. And there we have a little handle. All right, so let's get rid of some of these threads. Yeah, that's true, Lena, they do. Paul Allen, that might be it. Because I think my boss knew him. Did I really lose one of my pins over there? I did. Oh, and I just lost one on this side. I can see where this one was, though. Don't come down, please. Thank you. It is stiff, like that Wonder Under, I think, I mean, don't you think, like just seeing it like that, it looks a lot how stiff like the denim was. Yeah, I've heard of them, Libby. Oh, that's right, Elena. That sounds kind of familiar. Yeah, right, Nancy? I'm telling you, it really does feel different. Because I did it on one of the Ideal bags, I think, and I liked it better. It also, there's, because webbing is pretty fragile, even though it's used for really strong, you know, things. It's pretty fragile, and the fabric isn't. And it can be flatter to go through hardware, you know, when you have to like loop it through and make adjustable straps and things. Okay. So same thing, we're gonna butt this up. So this is 1.5 inches wide, whereas the last one I just did was 2 inches wide. So we're still gonna just straddle it over where those pins are. Same thing, 1/4 inch seam. Making sure none of my cocoons kind of sneaking under there. Okay, that was good. I just heard my bobbin finish winding, so I know it wound. I hadn't even double checked. And if you don't want to get confused with your right side, you can do this side and then pull it up and do both sides. Just remember, you want this raw edge to go towards. So you probably wouldn't do this. Like, you could, and you would immediately realize, oh, my handle's pointing down. Just make sure it's always pointing towards the raw edge. I would normally, just kind of shifted that a little bit, use like a marker of some sort to mark the placement of this. I wouldn't use pins. Yeah, I know, Cheryl. I mean, you could do one that's not so much fabric, but I will tell you, it's not worth it. Just do webbing. But if you have the fabric, I say do the whole width 4 times. Because I'm sure there's someone out there going, you don't have to use that much. You could just use a 1/4 inch seam and a 1.5 and a 1.5, and then you're, using a 3.5 inch width piece of fabric rather than 6 inches. But then you have a ridge where your seam allowance is. You also have to sew it and turn it right side out, which is fussy. And you don't have such an even thickness. This is perfectly thick, the same thickness all the way through. It's just so nice. All right, so let's put our inset on. You would think fusing this linen would make it behave, but look at all the threads I have all over it. It's so thready still. Sheesh. Okay, so the point of your inset and just right sides together, you can't really tell, but this is my lining side, and this was the one I fused. And so this side has the understitching. We're gonna put this, turn this inside out. And we're going to put this right sides together, line it up to that notch up there. And like I said, I'm going to trim this little seam allowance tail sticking out there so you can still see the point of my inset. Same with this one here. So you put the point to the notch. And then take a gander, make sure, okay, because if you were a little bit different in your seam allowance for your hem up there, you're going to need to adjust, because what's more important is that you can pivot the corner at that corner notch there. And it's like a little different. Plus, this little edge of your inset can get stretched. Oh, that's the notch, not that one. It was this one. It can get stretched because it's on a little bit of a bias. Oh yeah, Liberty handle. Ugh. I was just thinking a couple days ago how I want to make myself that ideal bag, and I want to make it in that green wax cotton, but I want the lining to be Liberty, and I don't have any right now that would work. I don't think I have. I think I have some Liberty, but it's birds. It's like these hand-drawn illustrated birds in black, it's like a birder's notebook type of thing. And I'm kind of saving it for a project for my mom someday because she loves birds. That's what you do with Liberty. You kind of save it. Wait for the right project. All right, make sure you get all these threads. This is my top stitch seam right here. You probably can't really see it. But there's one thread that my machine does this all the time. It kind of sucks it back into the seam. It's because I'm not careful when I start. I can totally prevent it. I just don't. So put that into towards your raw edge. And now you're approaching your other corner here. Make sure that you can pivot there. I'm going to pivot a little early. Early on the inset at least. And now you can really pull this. So now, like I said before, if you have trouble pivoting, you only have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so it's not too hard to pivot. But when you get there, you can always clip into the cocoon. Now the cocoon is just a long, straight edge. There's no corners in it. The corners are all on the inset. So you can, you know, go at that corner notch and just clip into your cocoon right up to your needle if you're having trouble. But in general, I don't find I need to unless I was using probably something really stiff. Like on the wax cotton, I'm probably going to have some trouble. So then, you know, I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to line this edge up over here and I'm going to pull firm, right? Pull it firm, and that way I don't get any tucks. That's the trick with turning a corner like that, is pulling firm, lifting it up, pulling firm, and then lining it all up so that you don't get it. Now this point should line up to that notch. There's the notch. I love it when it all works out. All right, now we're going to attach this facing here. I'm going to change my thread one more time after this. So we're going to turn back a 1/2 inch. And this is when, hopefully, oh, I don't have that notch on the lining, but I can see it on the insets right there. It's about 2 inches away from the top edge. It goes deep into here, and that's because, so when you're kind of looking at the cocoon when it's done, you can't really see any of this raw edge. You kind of see a bit of the finished. It just looks nice. So you're just going to sew this on with a 1/4 inch seam, just like this. So we're going to flatten all this out. And this is a long straight edge. So using the facing isn't hard at all. There's no corners to turn, nothing. It is just sewing a facing on. So we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. Ignore the handle, keep it out of the way. Make sure these threads here at that seam again are towards the raw edge. I did this bright green just for a little pop of color. I could have done the floral, but I thought the pop of color would be really fun. See, it's a long straight edge. Look at all those threads of my linen. All right, now you're going to get down here, fold this back. Hopefully you're lining up to the notch. My notch is down here. It's okay if it's a little bit off. Look at all those threads. No, Libby! There's no coming back from that. There are a few things you just can't change. Oh, I'm sorry, Libby. Yeah, you're going to have to just walk around in a handstand pose now from now on. That's all it is. That's all there is to it. All right, I'm going to trim this thread at the beginning, and I need to find a thread that matches this. Oh, does this? No, that does not. Let me see. This is a weird color. Oof. Pick your flashy facings based on what thread you have for them. Well, shoot. This is gonna have to be it. Yeah, that's true, Libby. Oh, you can get to sleep out the front. Okay, good. Yeah, Lynn, that's a better solution. Tell everybody else to stand on their head. I don't really need to change the bobbin, which is a good thing since I don't have enough of this to have a bobbin. This thread looks like the thread I use when I sew silks. I say that as if I sew silks all the time. I haven't sewn silks in a long time. But, you know, you need a smaller needle for them. You need a smaller needle, and then so you need smaller thread. All right, so we're going to edge stitch this. So press the facing. Sorry, my camera just won't look at there. So we're going to press the facing, all the seam allowance that way towards the facing. What a silence for Libby. Oh, for Libby's shirt. Okay, this thread surprisingly is matching when it didn't look like it was going to. I'm shocked. This is such a yellow green. It's definitely struggling against the heavier weight bobbin. That looks pretty good. All right, so now turn this right side out. And then get your label. And so our last stitch, it's going to have the bobbin being the blue. That's what's going to show on the other side. I was just checking to see if my green showed on the underside, but it doesn't. All right, so this is one of those, yeah, focus on the 2 to 4 inches in front of you. So when you start this part off, especially if you're using kind of a heavy fabric here, make sure that you get this nice and flat. And the reason I say this is because this thickness right here, especially when you first start off, it's really easy to get your stitching like way over here. Here's the seam, right? And what you want is it to be a nice parallel line. But I find that there's just something about starting this that it kind of wants to push off down here and kind of get you off this ridge. Don't let that happen. Be really firm with it. So pull this apart nice and firmly like this. You're the boss of this, so let it know that you're the boss and what you want it to do. And then you just turn under this edge, and it's, if yours isn't this thready, you're thrilled. You can just wrap it around this raw edge as a guide, if you like, just like that. So I've got it wrapped around. I'm gonna pull this really tight. I really want to make sure that I have a nice even seam. I'm not taking no for an answer. And I'm gonna keep my presser foot on the ridge of that seam allowance to kind of help it. Your laptop's like, oh my gosh. Well, that's nice, Sydney. That sounds intentional. All right, so here we are getting to the handle. Flatten out your handle. Tuck your label in there if you've got one and you want to use it. Get these threads here, or yeah, from the fabric. This kind of just does it itself. You just gotta make sure that you're staying on track. Like you just have to arrange it, and then it sews pretty easily. Because remember, it's a long straight line. We're not turning any corners. You're just trying to get a nice parallel line to that top edge. What did we learn about using linen? All right, so here's your handle. I almost missed my opportunity to flatten it out, so don't be like me. You gotta make sure that you have ample room to kind of flatten out this handle so that it's nice and flush with the bag there. All right, we're on there, we're fine. So now we can kind of arrange the last of this, wrap it around. This side isn't as persnickety to keep it parallel to the edge when you end. It's just when you start, but definitely keep it in the back of your head because you want to pull this apart, keep it all nice and smooth. And plus you're like already, you know, sewn a bunch, so you got your sewing legs under you. All right, that looks nice. A little pop of color in there. Let's see how this side looks. My thread matches really well. That's another strategy. My thread matches well so that I have a nice, even, you know, line. And see that it's sewn through the handle. Oh, I love the handle popping like that. Get rid of all these linen threads. Once you get rid of them all, hopefully they don't come back. I think the Wonder Under was a good strategy. Or if you wanted to use Pellon, like any kind of fusible, and then line it. The one thing I want to say is if you fuse only one layer of fabric and then you line it, you're gonna have a little bit of bagginess in your lining on the inside because it's not smooth against the outer fabric. And I think at first you might like go, it doesn't look like hers, but you'll forget about it after a while. Yeah, that's pretty cute. I like the handle being like that. So cute. It's for, well, it was designed for knitters and crocheters, Nancy, or fiber folks for this yarn club. So they can put their project, like put their yarn balls down there at the bottom and then put their project on top. And then when they pull out their project and they can knit, their materials are in there that they need, the yarn or whatever, if they're crocheting or whatever. And then the project kind of keeps everything safe in there. And they can also like wear it around their wrist, you know, and knit on the go. Oh, Sydney, you just can't win. That sounds kind of good. Maybe I'll get one of those today. This is pretty cute. All right, and I do think that this fabric doing the interfacing, that was actually pretty successful. I'm kind of surprised. At first I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Wonder Under is so stiff. And then when I did it, I was like, ooh, that's not as stiff as I remember. Because I'm used to stiffener now. But, yeah. So, Nancy, I'm just doing variations today on sewing the cocoon. Look at that little pop of color. I'm just trying to get rid of all these threads because the linen, that linen, yo. This one folds nice and easily. Is my handle crooked? No, okay. It's the brown sugar oat milk drink all over again. What does that mean? This is so cute. Yeah, Nancy, it's a specific use. Okay. Now I'm going to sew the wax cotton one. So this should be entertaining. I'm hoping my thread's going to be stout enough because I really struggled finding a thread. Sometimes you just don't know what you're going to be sewing live on YouTube and you don't have all the threads. Yeah, it would be a fast thing to sew Christmas gifts, and I'm going to sew one at the end quickly. Yeah, Nancy, but that's okay. I know a lot of folks here don't. It's just kind of the bag making I did for so long. And I was asked to do that, which was, I loved it. I was really flattered that I got asked to design a bag. I totally would do projects like that. It's kind of fun. It's good side money. I need to sew on something. Did I just change? Oh, I didn't change this. This thread's a little suspicious. Oh. Brown sugar. Oh, that does sound pretty good. The popular kind of milk around here is almond milk because almonds are grown here. And I was pretty excited about that because I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is like a regional, you know, milk alternative. I need to get rid of some spool of thread here. And then I hated it. I was so bummed. Okay, so, all right, so the variation for this one is that it's in the wax cotton canvas. I haven't sewn a lot of wax cotton canvas. And I'm not going to line the pocket because it doesn't need it, but I am going to bind it just for fun. So you missed what you're saying earlier about using stash quilting. How was the upshot that it would work? Yeah, I think so, Cass. So I think like the reason I gave that option was that I know a lot of folks don't have maybe a really stiff fabric in their stash or finding one that's actually stiff, because there are a lot of really, really cute canvases, and then you get them and you're like, oh, this is soft and drapey. You know, it doesn't have much body. And that's okay. You don't have to have, the bag doesn't have to have that stiff body. But both of those right now, if there were a few things inside of it, they would stand up on their own, no problem. And I think when they collapse in on themselves, like I like to have a bag that stays open when I'm using it, makes it kind of easy access. And I think it looks nicer. You know, I think it just looks less sloppy, you know. So I wanted to give an option if you're just like, I have this quilting cotton and it's got hedgehogs on it and I have to use this hedgehog fabric for this bag, which would be so cute. I mean, literally, I should have named this thing the hedgehog. That would have been so cute. But I wanted to give an option for being able to use a lighter weight fabric. And so I had some Wonder Under, which is a double-sided fusible web. It's not interfacing because it's actually just the glue. And then you iron it on, peel off the paper, and then iron on the other fabric. So it makes it like a double-sided fabric. So that's it, Cass. But yeah, if you wanted to, say you wanted to make 10 of these for gifts, I think the thing to think about ahead of time is that you're using twice the amount of fabric and a layer of interfacing. I always think about things as far as the cost goes. If you're making 1 or 2 for your like absolutely special knitting pals that you've gotten together with for years, pull out all the stops by, you know, like, I'm not here to stop you doing that. But you know what I mean? Like, I think like it's something to think of. If you wanted to make cocoons and sell them, you would probably want it to be the fewest number of materials. Speaking as someone who for years sewed and sold things that had an outer fabric, a lining fabric, a stiffener, and binding, I'll tell you, it adds a lot to the price, you know. Right, Lynn? That I have tons of dark green. I have like all kinds of greens and none of them work. This green is so bright. It looks pretty true on the camera for me. This is my color, you guys. Just so you know, I don't wear anything this color because I can never find it. This is my color. I can eat this color. I love this color. Okay, so my variation for this cocoon is that I'm using wax cotton. I'm not lining the inset, but I am going to bind it. And I'm going to bind it to the inside again, just like I did on the vinyl. Oh, let's do the edge. Let's just bind the edge. So I need to trim off 1/4 inch because I didn't do that on the other one. So we're going to trim off 1/4 inch. If you're going to bind the edge, you've got to get rid of some of the seam allowance. All right? So we're going to start from the inside of the fabric. I think I'm going to call this the inside. Start from the wrong side if you're binding. This is your little binding tutorial today. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, cool, Cass. Your thread rags morphed to mustard, DK blues, dark blues and dark greens. Oh, really? That's funny, Sydney. So you did get it? That stitch length seemed really long all of a sudden because my machine really loves grabbing onto the canvas. All right, so if you're doing bias, pull gently. This is a good binding tutorial if anyone struggles doing binding. If you're doing binding that's going to sit on the edge, in other words, not be pushed to the inside of a garment or to the outside of a garment, you want to pull it gently a little bit. Just pull a little bit. You can see how it's standing up. I'm not pulling that hard. Just pull a little bit. Don't trim all the way to the edge yet. And then it's going to want to turn to this side. This is really narrow fabric for binding. You would want to use something wider, but I just thought I'd give it a shot. This is so narrow. I really love using an awl. We're on the right side of the inset now, and that's what the key with binding is. You want to end on the right side. Don't start on the right side and go to the wrong side, because then you're going to be worried about your bobbin thread landing in the right spot. We don't really care about where a bobbin is on the other side because no one's going to see it. But if we do, if we take this fold and we put it just past that first stitch line and then we keep our needle to the right of that stitch line, it's going to land on the wrong side in the right spot on the wrong side on the right spot. On the inside in the right spot. All right. And see how it landed on, that's the wrong side. It's the right side. Sarah, I don't know, like I kind of dread working with it, and then when I did the one cocoon I did, it wasn't that bad, and it's probably because I've sewn so many things with stiffener. I don't really like the crease, but I'm thinking that I'm gonna go like this and get rid of the crease. That doesn't really get rid of it, but it kind of covers it up. I could also iron it out. Maybe I should have ironed it out. There we go. Did that just trigger a few of you? Sorry. Okay, I'm itchy. All right, so if you have a right or wrong side, you're gonna put this right sides together. The annoying thing is gonna be turning it right sides and wrong sides together. It's easy to sew. It doesn't really get hung up on my machine, but I have heard of people having trouble sewing the wax cotton. I will say that all brands are different. I've gotten wax cotton from 3 different places. One of them, I wouldn't even tell people where it came from because it was such a bad experience and it was kind of hard to sew. It was fine, like the fabric was fine. It was very limp though, and it felt really tacky. This stuff is pretty stiff, like, you know, it's pretty stiff. And I've bought from these folks twice now, the Al Francis on Etsy, and I bought the same weight fabric both times, and they both came a little different. So that's the thing you need to kind of think about, is that they're doing it by hand, but the quality is really good. I think this is the 10 ounce. I did feel the stink eye. I know you guys. So let's see. I'm gonna try and top stitch this, but it's gonna be hard. But it's gonna get rumpled, right? You just gotta kind of rip the Band-Aid off. If you want to use wax cotton and you don't want it to ever look rumpled, don't use wax cotton, because it will. I can look it up, Libby, what weight it was. It wasn't the 16 ounce, because you have to remember that I think the ounces that they're talking about is the ounce of the fabric before the wax. If you got 16 ounce and then waxed it, that would be really, really stiff. Like most denim is in the 10 ounce range. I think this was like a 9 to 10 ounce. I think this was 9 ounce. And now it feels, you know, it's stiff. It kind of changes it. You don't really take the wax into account. If that makes sense. Let's see if I can... I'm the boss of this project. I'm going to do it from this side so I don't have to turn the project right side out. I am the boss. This you wouldn't want to sew for a living. I'm really trying to protect it from hitting my back stitch. Can you guys see okay? Your feed dogs are probably going to leave a mark. That's some serious ASMR, huh? Looks pretty good. Yeah, if you want, Libby, I can send you a little, like, cut off of piece of this. That is open, isn't it? It doesn't feel like it right there, but it is. Okay. It is, okay. I'm the boss. Just mash it down. If you've ever bought my project bag or pocket bucket video, I talk about bag mashing. Mash your bag when you're sewing. Make sure you have complete control of it. It's so important. See, I keep accidentally hitting my back tack. I have a little cheater back tack right here. I don't think you can see it. You can't see it. I show it in the industrial machine video I did. Okay, go across the bottom. This is when you also want to keep this stitch continuous because it'll just be easier to manage. I don't think this stitch was necessary because the canvas isn't going to unravel, but it's a nice touch. It looks nice, right? Oh, because I just crumpled this, Libby. I just went like this on camera. I'm trying to hide my seam there, or the fold line. All right, so now we have the French seam. Oof. Maybe we don't do a French seam on this. Like, the other thing I like to think about with bag making, and this isn't talked about enough, is saving your hands. So if you had to do this for a living and you were sewing canvas, wax canvas, like I've met a lot of bag makers at shows, and over the years, they would eventually talk with me because maybe they wanted to ask about using industrial machines or how I got binding or whatever. And I was always really open with my information because I knew a lot of them didn't have the advantage of some of the places I got to work at. And I was always telling them, get industrial sewing machines, get industrial sewing machines. I can tell you like 3 bag makers that were really popular that ended up doing it, and we're thankful that they did. There was one in particular bag maker that did wax canvas, and I remember just thinking, oof, yeah, I feel for you. Like, it's so much work. It's really hard on your hands, and it's hard on your upper body, and it's sewing is a physical activity. So if you're already struggling, if you have to sit there all the time and then you have to struggle, you have to think about that. So if I had to turn this bag right side out and then, you know, put it wrong sides together and then do the French seam is not at all going to have any benefit here except the way it looks. So if I were sewing this in production, I wouldn't do a French seam here. No, yeah, it's what I just saw. It won't fray. I mean, you can see a little bit of fray, but this is not going to fray. You don't really have to worry about it with the canvas. So now you can do just a 1/4 inch seam there if you want. There is a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and because I have this little flaw in my fabric right here, I'm going to keep to my 1/2 inch seam. But I'm not going to do the French seam. I don't need to enclose it. The reason I did the French seam was to give the corners of the bag body to kind of help it stand open. We don't need that with wax canvas. Yeah, you could, Carrie, I said that. You don't have to top stitch that seam. It just looks nice. I just wanted to see if I could do it. You know, sometimes you do things because it looks a certain way. Sometimes you do because it's a function. Sometimes you do it because you don't want 12 annoying emails from customers saying they're worried their stuff's going to fall apart because you didn't sew it the way they think you need to. I think mostly bags, Nicole. I haven't used it very much. I find it... I never used it at Chicken Boots because it was just starting to become more readily available. And the trend started going towards this, which I loved, but I wasn't set up for it, and there wasn't a lot of wholesale fabric available. I also didn't want, at the time the ones that we were able to get, they weren't that great. And they were leaving residue on machines, and I didn't want to do that to my machines when they had to sew other things too. But I've seen people's needles be completely gummed up with wax and stuff like that. So it's something to think about. You may have to have a dedicated machine for it. All right, do I have to turn this right side out yet? We're gonna do it when we absolutely have to. All right, so let's put our handle on. Mash. Don't hold it precious. Mash it. Mash it and get it down. If you learn anything from me today, that is one thing I want you to take away. Be the boss of it. Ah, shoot, I don't have cream thread. Let's get rid of this loose piece of that. We're gonna use green thread here, and the reason I'm gonna justify that is that my hem around the top is going to go through, so it'll kind of mimic it. That's my justification. Okay. You don't even need these on the wax. I can see my needle holes. When I did the production of these cocoons, I marked on the bags with pen. And that's because this is where that marking would be, and it gets completely enclosed. But you'll see, like, if you are one of the few people that bought one of the samples, you'll see I experimented with drilling a hole because that would be more customary in production, but the hole shows on the wrong side, and I just didn't really like that, you know. I don't need to be like budget manufacturing, not on a bag like that, like this, you know. All right, let's get rid of these pins here. I can kind of feel it on my hands, but not really. And, you know, I've been working on my Kelly Anorak with the otter wax. That leaves a residue. All right, so now we're going to put the inset on. I still haven't had to turn my bag right side out, which is great. Remember, I trimmed the 1/4 inch off of the top here, so it should all line up. Okay, we're really going to have to let it know that we're the boss. So let's just start folding it and taming it a little bit. There we go. This is the right side. So here's my notch, and so my point should still line up. Let's look for the corner. We're good. All right. Focus on the 4 inches, that is. That's what we'll call it. Focus on the 4. All right, get to that corner, and I'm gonna clip the cocoon side to the needle just to help it. Pull this over, pull that flat. Make sure you don't have a bump in there. So sometimes this will kind of bump up. Make sure it flattens out, your inset flattens out, because then underneath will be flat too. It's getting that nice weathered look. I like it. I can see those right now, so I'm gonna get rid of them. All right, so we're approaching our corner. Here's my notch and there's my corner, so I'm not quite making it, so I'm gonna do a really narrow seam there. And we're gonna clip again, kind of help it pivot. Pull hard, flatten it out, keep sewing, and then arrange it. Always stop needle down when you're doing this kind of stuff. It's a little bit of arranging, but this isn't too hard. You don't really have the bias of this edge of the inset either, so. All All right, so now we just have the hem and we're done. And now we're going to turn it right side out. So that was pretty good. We didn't have to turn it but once. So that's the thing to think about. Let's look at this. Make sure we don't have any tucks before we turn. So then you might have to spend a little bit of time doing this. See, this is why you wouldn't want to manufacture it like this. Your pristine waxed canvas is now broken in. But look at how nice it'll stay in that point. That's so satisfying. Let's push out our corners. I can't imagine doing this all the time. I worked at one place where they had to send, like it would be mid-production, and then they had to send the garment to a group, usually in the quality control department, because they kind of handled stuff like they did all the fussy kind of handling and trimming of threads. But those folks would have to do something to the garment, like turn it, I think, or pop out a cuff or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was also kind of heavy duty, and so they had to swap out the crew so that nobody got a repetitive motion injury, because that was a responsible factory that I worked at. Mostly they don't do that. All right, so this hem, I'm just going to fold. I'm not going to use the facing. It's going to look a little bit unfinished, but the waxed canvas kind of lends itself to that. But I am still going to hem it down. So I'm going to start at the base of the binding. I did try bags where I hemmed around, top stitched all the way around. That was a fiasco. Don't try that. Hey, Megan. Isn't it amazing, Megan? Oh my God, it's totally why I bought it. Let's get rid of some of these loose canvas threads. Yeah, I talked to them about binding. Remember, flatten your handle out. Forgot to mention that. Oh, my label. I barely made it. I don't really care that my label's in these because I'm just going to sell them, but I like to demonstrate that so people will remember, oh, I want to put a label in, And if you have the same style as me where it hangs down, then you have a kind of an idea of a spot to put it. And someone said that they really liked that in one of my early pattern videos, that they said, I really like that you gave a place for the label because I struggle with that. And I'm like, you know what? I always do too. It's like one of the things we sometimes would have a meeting about, where to put a label. It's not as easy as it seems sometimes. Okay, I'm trying to flatten out this little wrinkle here so I can get this nice and flat. Because I still want this to be as flat and in the position I want it to be in as I approach to sew it. I went a little too far there. It won't be as canted then. All right. That's a pretty fast one because you don't have as much finishing to do. I will say I can see... You can't see that. I can see light through this seam right here. Yeah, this looks pretty cool. It's cloudy here today. The lighting is so weird. Looks like a paper bag. Let's see if we can get this to look more square. I'm going to post these for sale today if anyone wants them. What do you think? Do you guys like that distressed look? It's stout. Can you hear it? But you know, in fact, this isn't as stout as the one I sold recently, the dark green one. That was a much stiffer. I'm actually not going to mash it down because this will save me time after the stream when I go to photograph it. I have spent so much of my lifetime arranging stuff. You see a platform crock? Yeah, right, Megan? You want to call the dibs on the green one? Oh, Sarah, thanks. Yeah, I think it looks good. Oh, I forgot. I have the alert because we were getting all those Patreon ones, those old Patreon. We'll do it again. Hey. I should enlarge the little message you wrote there. I like it. So here's my other fold line. So there's tips online on how to get rid of creases, even like this distressed, using a hair dryer. So if it was something three-dimensional, you could use a hair dryer or a light iron. Definitely protect your iron, you know. But you can get rid of things like this. Like say you're someone who sells this stuff and you want it to look, you know, not so distressed, at least when it arrives so they can do the distressing. You can kind of do that. And shipping might kind of foil that. Let's get rid of some of these threads. It does look like a little pea pod. That was one of my names for this, was the peach pie pod. Ah, thanks, Nicole. All right, so the last one I'm going to sew, I'm just going to sew production style. I don't know how fast I am at these anymore. But this is the straight up one. So it has the handle. It has a inset with lining, and I did a contrast so you can see. And then I borrowed this from the other one because I didn't end up using because I serged it. And this is the facing. So I'm just going to sew this together. I'm going to try and sew this together production style, how I did it, so you can kind of see. It won't be much different, except that I'll just keep sewing. I got these down to I feel like I got it down to less than 12 minutes, but I'm really scared you guys are going to time me and it's going to be like 20. I don't want to know that it took me that long now. I'm going to change the thread. One of the other things that made it pretty straightforward for me to sew all those cocoons was there was no thread changes, right? So this one, you know, this one should have a thread change. So you know what? Let's sew this in cream or white. Let's sew this in white. We can get away with that. I can get away with white for both of those. Maybe not the handle, but because we're going to hem through it, it'll help kind of tie it in, you know? That's my story. I never use white. Okay. Nope. Wouldn't that have been a tragedy if I would have threaded that and then I would have had to been like, oh, I have to pull this through still and thread it again. All right, I brought 2 spools over, but I'm not gonna wind a bob in. All right, so I've got my serger over there ready. Got my iron hot. All right, so the first thing I would do is the inset. This is the fussiest part of the whole cocoon, and the most home sewing like is dealing with the inset. Iron. And I only serged the bottom of these. I don't know where the cutter is on my serger yet. All right, and then I can set this aside. But I always trimmed up, because I would do 25 at a time. Make sure that this is pulled all the way up. Trim this unevenness off so that it's ready for the next step. And then I'm going to do the seams. A little too much stuff on my surface here. I always have to hold this and mash it down so it doesn't grab my back tack. Because one time I wasn't doing that, and what happened was the machine started back stitching, and it, you know, it can get kind of dangerous. I thought I ran out of bottom right there. Ideally, I would sew this to where it doesn't need any trimming, but ideally never works out. I could have probably skipped this trimming because it was pretty straight and there were no stray threads. But that's kind of at the wide end of my allowance there. Like I should have done it a little under 1/4 inch, but I didn't. Alright, pop it. When I'm sewing a bag, also production style, I don't worry about the rest of the bag either. Because I never think, oh, let's turn the whole bag right side out. I may not need the whole bag right side out for the next step. So I just focus on what I need it for right now. Just kind of that whole focus on the 4 inches thing. And I try and trim threads as I go because I'm a one-person show and I don't have a quality control department, and we always wanted our product to be ready to go when it came off the machine. It went through a small inspection thing when it got its hang tag, and that's it. All right, where's my... Oh no, Sydney. All right, so this one's marked with pin. Yeah, sometimes I feel like I have those days where there's like nothing. I'm like scared to try anything because I'm like, okay, everything's going really bad. So maybe I shouldn't touch my favorite sewing machine. I don't want to hurt it. This webbing is pretty stout. I like it. It's very tightly woven. It's almost as if you took the 2-inch wide and just tightened it. I got it from my local fabric store. I was really glad I still had a piece of it for this gray bag. It's only 1.5 inches wide. I keep thinking the little branches in this are threads. That's why you see me pick at it and there's nothing there. I try and get one stitch off the end of webbing. Sometimes I go too far though, and I'm bummed that I did that. All right, I'm 5 minutes in. I think I got this. Let's see, we'll see. Pull, pull. Why does my serger stitch look like that? Looks kind of bad. So there's that little buckle I've been talking about. You see that little buckle right here? So you have to lift that up and straighten it out. It's the little corner getting tucked in there. It's probably really hard to see on the camera. Make sure this is gone and this is gone. And you are gone. You know, we talked about having a zoom on a particular thing the other day, and I feel terrible. I forgot what it was. Was it on sewing a particular type of thing or step, or maybe working on our sergers together? I can't remember. Oh no. My stitching is a little crooked there. No. See, this is what happens when your threads aren't pushed to the raw edge. They will pop back into your seam. And those are a little harder to trim. Like, you really can't unless you go into the seam allowance and then pull it through. No, I don't think it was a projector. Surge your confidence. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that idea. Do something easy, Sydney. Do something non-lethal. You know? Organize your thread. Don't do that, please. I need you to be tidy. am I doing on time? Oh, pull, pull. Trim your threads. Trim your thread. It's not done until you trim your threads. My ink went through there. There we go. 10 minutes. I knew it was 10 minutes, but I gave myself 2 extra. That's 20% more. That's your thread is the only thing organized. Oh, there's a boo-boo right there. I'm out of practice. Oh, and this is why. See that? This is sloppy of me. See that? I didn't have any of my others do that. So I didn't press that seam out very well. So I could actually cheat and just enclose it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to actually take it out because I want to. I want to fix it. So this is not pulled to the edge, you know, nice and crisp. Kind of like this. This isn't very good. And so then it poked my raw edge through the Fringe seam. See that? So we'll just fix it. Not bad though. When I'm in practice. 10 minutes. That's what you sometimes don't want your customers to know, because they think, oh, it only takes you 10 minutes. Why'd you charge so much? And I have a billion answers for that. So, because it didn't take just 10 minutes for that one. Plus, you know, you have to build in your thread changing, your cutting time, overhead. That's why people price incorrectly often. They just think, oh, it only takes me a half hour to make these. I'm just going to charge them a half an hour of labor, and that's it, or whatever. And then they don't include all those other things in there. They don't understand why they're losing money. It's ridiculously hard to make money, so you have to be honest about it and train your customers to know what they're paying for and want to pay that, you know, because they like whatever you're doing. For us, it was the fact that we did things that were very specific to something, and we did it in a really good quality way. There we go. Fix that. Phew. Did I pass the test? Boom! Because you're worth it. Exactly. Because it took me 30 years to get that fast. Boom. I learned that a lot about that too, like with people who like would want to pay for me to consult. You know, when I first started doing that, I was like, me? Why me? And then someone was like, because Jeremy, no one else knows what you do, and they want to know that. And so there's not a lot of people that do that and that they have access to either. Well, yeah, exactly, Nancy, but people don't want to pay for that. So telling them that part is kind of dicey to say that part, because they think, oh, okay, this is like what I used to get a lot, and I can almost quote. People said this almost word for word. It must be nice to sit around picking out cute fabric all day and designing bags. I got that sentence lots, and it never bugged me because I understood what they meant. And it was such a great thing that I got to do that. But that was such the tiniest part of my job. And honestly, picking out fabrics was very stressful because you really have to put so much money in buying the fabric, getting it to you, cutting it up, sewing it, and then people see it. Because you don't involve your customers in the process of picking fabric. It's kind of, it's fraught with issues to do that. But I would get people saying, Chicken Boots, I hope you really picked this fabric out, you know, and then I would look at that. I wouldn't say anything, but I would pay attention to those comments. Yeah, exactly, Nicole. And I like it. I like to sew, and I like to sew production style. Not a lot of folks do. Right, Elena? They're like, no, we're putting books away all day because you guys don't know how to. Right? I think it's easy to oversimplify anybody's job. And you know, Rayanne, honestly, having Rayanne there made it a pleasure to do a lot of those things because she always got excited about everything, and sometimes I would do a project just because she was interested in it, because sometimes you gotta keep morale up because you're doing the same freaking thing every day, all day long. Or you're having like a day like Sydney is, and everything goes wrong that day. And you're just like, wow, let's not do any sewing today. Let's go get coffee and a treat. Because you got to cut your losses at a certain point and go, all right, everything we're touching is breaking. Like the time Rayanne cut through the cord of the electric cutter while, like, cut through it, and we had an indoor fireworks show. So, you fixed it! Woo, Sydney! What'd you fix? All right, well okay, I am thrilled with how all these look. These are really cute. Yeah, right, Sydney? I know. I mean, there were days where she and I were like, maybe we shouldn't drive. Maybe we should walk. And they were like, well, on this road, we shouldn't walk. Maybe we'll get delivery. Like, like, sometimes you just don't have very profitable days. There's a lot of those. And you don't get paid to ship. People really hate paying for shipping, right? Who likes paying for shipping? Do you think those customers happen to all businesses or only handcrafters? A lot to handcrafters, because there's I mean, and it's one of the good things about being a handcrafter, right, is that you have that personal connection with your customers. And part of why you're doing it is because your customers really like what you're doing and they believe in what you see is possible. You're not going to get someone telling someone at Amazon, you know, must be nice to sit around and pick out products to sell all day. You know, like, that's not how it is. So, I think the only comment I ever got that really bugged me was the person that would come in the booth and say, oh, I could make that. Right, Cavi? Exactly. You're a master internet searcher and button pusher. My daughter is too. She's amazing at research. It's awesome. Yeah, so... but, you know, like with shipping, that was always a hard one because, you know, when a package is shipped and leaves, it's actually, this is my rant for the day. And it's probably not going to be what you think it is. My rant for the day is when companies started offering free returns. And I know that most of us love that, right? I'm going to include myself. I like free returns and I like that kind of thing. But the problem with that is that it started a culture where we expect that. And that's not what I got. I never got people expecting free returns. But what happens is it devalued the shipping process and how much it costs to ship things and how much it costs to actually pull the product, put it into a package, put a shipping label, make sure the weight is correct, put a shipping label on, get the address and everything correct, and then get it to the dock and then get it picked up and taken. And so once it leaves, it's not your responsibility. It's actually the post office's or UPS or whatever, right? This is why I say the whole return thing kind of broke things. Because people were like, oh, you didn't get your package? Well, here you go. We're going to send one right off to you. It started making it seem like the company was responsible for the shipping when they aren't. And so then U.S. Mail and places like that were like, great, we don't have to worry about it. And so when they don't get things to you quickly, it's our fault, not theirs. And so it kind of created this crazy situation where we're mad at companies for shipping things when it's not the company. So, yeah, right, Walter? Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why picking out fabric was so stressful for me. And sometimes we did. So, yeah. Yeah, so it's... I don't think I offered free shipping for years, and it was like over a certain amount. So, anyway, those are the things people don't really want to hear and talk about, but it is something it's good to know. And I do see a lot of small makers doing it kind of badly too. So there's kind of ways, better ways to do it on lots of fronts, you know. I always felt like the best thing to do is just to be transparent. Charge the person for what they're paying for. I never really tacked anything on, but I would tack a little bit on because the hang tag, the twine that tied the hang tag, the zipper pull, all the shipping labels, the boxes, all that stuff costs. So you have to build that into the shipping price. Otherwise, it's getting built into the product. So pick your poison. Oh, yeah, Libby. I know exactly what you mean. You know what you need, Libby? Your daughter needs to drop it off for you. You need a middle person. Yeah, does she start every conversation with, you know what you should do? You know what you could do that would make so much money? You know what you could sew that would make so much money? How many people in the chat have heard that? I'm about to put a sign on my door, you guys, because there's a new person moving in, and I'm already getting the sewing vibe. I'm going to put a sign on my door, I think, like something cutesy that just looks like I'm being funny, that says, yes, I sew, no, I won't hem your pants, you know, like Mr. Domestic does. Yeah. I tell people I don't know how to hem pants. I'm whispering because someone's out there. Yeah, right, you guys? $1.25 an hour, right? Oh, man. I know they have good intentions, yeah. Yep. Yeah. I just tell, like, I do strongly suggest that. So if you ever do have someone say that they want you to hem their pants, just say you don't know how to. I'm being dead serious. I say it all the time, and it's the first time you say it, you might crack a smile. So you got to work on it. You really have to work on it, right? Yeah, that is not the kind of sewing. So Cheryl, the problem with saying that though is, well, you know, it's not that hard. That's what they say. That's not that hard. It's only a straight seam. It's only a quick little thing. Yeah, so I say it and it's hilarious because I've literally said it to people who've seen me make motocross pants with 90 pattern pieces, with piping, cording, webbing, belt, all that built in, Kevlar, ballistic cloth, Gore-Tex, all in the same pair of pants. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to hem pants. And they're like, really? Wow. And that's literally, they believed me. And my husband was behind them, and he just went, like, my husband doesn't emote very much, and I remember him looking up at me like, did you just lie to one of our closest friends? Oh, you're barely friends. Dog toys? Oh. Oh, good for you, Cheryl. You are weak. She didn't take no for an answer. What a bully, Nicole. That person's a bully. Yeah, Libby, that's a good one. Yeah, definitely. Can you sew this for me on Instagram? If you guys need confidence, if there's anyone here that's lurking and, you know, or you just need the confidence to be able to say no, that account is good. They're pretty much like no means no. But there is a lot of really well-crafted responses that people could have said that I think are really great models for how you can kind of field those kinds of suggestions. Like the fact that we can't put our sewing machine in the window where the light is best because our neighbors are going to bug us. Cheryl's like, just take it to the dry cleaners. Oh my gosh, I literally had my friend start a business to take all this kind of work from me. I told her, I was like, she was doing stuff on the side, and I was like, do you want a full-time business doing alterations? Like, would you ever want a storefront? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to start sending you everybody that asks me to sew for them. And she's like, okay. And she does. To this day, she's had it for 15 years. And I think someday she hated me. But she got full-time busy, too. Oh, yeah, Lynn, exactly. Our production rate in our shop, meaning when I had chicken boots, do you want to know what my rate was? It was $25 an hour. So I charged $25 an hour for sewing on everything. And that's not what I paid Rayanne. She didn't make that much because that paid for, you know, your workers' comp insurance, your business insurance, your overhead, all these things associated with the labor. So if you're looking for a labor cost and you're a production sewist, that's a good place to start. Start with $25 an hour. You still won't be making much money. You don't know how to do that, that's Allison. Oh, man. Oh, that's awesome, Elena. They need long-range binoculars to see yours. I've seen people say that, though. They're like, oh, I have my sewing machine in the window. It's the only place I can put it. And then people ask me, neighbors, and I'm like, oh. That's when you get that, like, film on the window that you can see through, but they can't see in, right? We need a support group. All right, so here again, this is that little case I was talking about. So I think I'm going to work on this pattern next. You guys seem kind of interested in it. It's a fun one to sew. A little over bright here. So it has the clear pocket, 3 flat pockets, the zippered pocket here. That's clear. And then this one you could customize into something else. These are like tool pockets right now. So you see, like, it goes. This is kind of too fat. This was designed so that really, really tiny, tiny DPNs could be right here to bigger right there. So, and then it doesn't have a zippered closure. It has this 3/4 inch elastic, and it's promise it's secure, guarantee it. So I think I'll work on that next. All right, you guys. There's a lot of you talking today. Thanks. I really appreciate it. I love it when you guys talk. For like only 30 people here, there's a lot of people talking in chat. And these turned out great. These were really fun to sew. I love sewing this thing. This is one design I've made. I actually love sewing this one. This is so cute. Oh my goodness, I love this. No, that's a going rate for sure. Yeah, totally, Sarah. Yeah, when I worked one place and I did pattern drafting and consulting for them, what is that? Oh, I think it's the fuse. Okay, I was like, was that a rip? It was for a military contract. So they were a subcontractor they weren't a subcontractor. They were the military contractor, and I was a subcontractor for them. And they were making something that I had to sign an NDA for. And when I was telling him my prices, and I had had these prices for a long time, I was very comfortable with it. I was very comfortable charging. I was at that point where I was just like, if they don't like my price, I don't want to work with them because I was busy enough. And people couldn't believe, like, I would be like, oh, I'll start this in a month. And they'd be like, oh, well, what do you mean a month? I have to wait a month? I'm like, if I needed work tomorrow, you probably wouldn't want to work with me. That means I don't have enough work keeping me busy and I'm not doing a good enough job. So yeah, it's going to be a month, right? So this guy, when I bid it out, he just stopped and he was like, I think you should double that. And he coached me, and I was charging a pretty decent rate at the time, but I also lived somewhere where it wasn't too expensive. Well, it kind of was, but it wasn't that bad. And he made me double it. And I had some problems with that at first, but then he was like, look, I'm just going to tell you, like, this job is going to be probably something you've never worked on before. And the budget is there, and we need to use the budget. So I don't know how I feel about that still to this day, but it was just a one-off project, and that was it. And it was a really fascinating project, and I learned a lot. And I actually got to work with materials I've never seen before that kind of blew my mind, that existed. So it was a really great experience for me. I couldn't put it on my resume though, so there's that. I got paid well, but I can't put it on my resume. Yeah, right, Walter? Yeah, I don't say no to my mom or my family. I'd have trouble saying it to, like, yeah, but I'm pretty good. And maybe I would pull a Cheryl. Just charge them what the dry cleaners do and then take it to the dry cleaners. It's always, if you're in a small town, you get a lot of people asking, it's really helpful to go and get business cards from the local person. Yeah, I don't know, Allison. I don't know. I can tell you that it was a vest, and I can't tell part of it, but it was to keep them cool. How about that? It was to keep them cool. And it was highly engineered and about this thick. It wasn't bad. It was probably about that thick. It was pretty interesting. You've said no to your mom. Ooh, Elena, you're savage. No, I'm just teasing. Oh, well, that's good, yeah. All right, guys. I love it. Yesterday we got in a good conversation about projectors. Nancy, I don't know if you're here, Nancy, but I saw your question in the Projector Sewers chat. You're already looking at getting one. Not that I'm trying to out you, but it is, a 47,000 member group, so it's not a secret. Okay, so Saturday I'm going to be sewing the blazer, which is right here. Look at it. It looks so good, you guys. So this is the facing that I had problems with last week, and I sewed wrong. And this is still not how it was supposed to be sewn, but I'm leaving it like this. But I do have it matching, see, for those of you that were there. So it was supposed to be bound. The edge was supposed to be bound, and then the seam allowances would have worked out great. But I'm going to be attaching the lining to the outer jacket. Oh, maybe oh, shoot. I have to do the bound buttonhole thing, huh? All right, so I'm going to do a bound buttonhole and attach the lining on Saturday. And that's not going to leave much for the following week. My blazer is almost done. I'm so excited. Woo, woo. So, all right, guys, I'm going to head out. So I'll see you Saturday if you want. Next week, I'm making the Ryan Raglan by 5 out of 4 patterns. I'm going to make it like a sweater. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks for the donation. I appreciate it. Have a good one, you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good Friday. Sydney, stay out of trouble. right? Don't like operate a chainsaw or anything, okay? Oh, cool, Lena. That's awesome. I bet you'll get so much out of that course because I'm doing it kind of, you know, with my own wits. No, I think it was, Nancy. You got some good questions. I don't think I had seen that covered in, you know, their pinned stuff. So. Oh, okay, Carrie. Bye, you guys. Oh, really? Okay, cool, Nancy. That's awesome. All right. Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Be careful, Sydney. All right. See you guys. Bye.